Welcome. I'm Kimberly Williams, the CEO for Absorb Software. Thank you for joining us today to celebrate International Women's Day. Today, we have a great group of panelists who are all leaders in the STEM field. As most of you know, there's a really large gap between the percentage of women who major in STEM fields compared to men. And further, even once women do major in a STEM field, they're less likely than their male counterparts to actually stay in a STEM field for a career. Interestingly, with some of the lowest gender equality scores, country scores, they have the highest percentage of STEM graduates. So countries like Algeria, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates all have STEM graduates as women being close to 50%. And in other countries like Finland, Norway, Sweden, and Ireland, who top the gender equality rankings, have fewer than 25% of their STEM graduates who are women. As countries need more and more STEM workers in order to progress their economy, tapping into women to fill this gap can be a major step forward. And so what I'd like to do today is to talk a little bit with these panelists about the experiences that they've had, because they provide a great role model to those people who are interested in potentially pursuing a STEM field, and just the great, obviously represent the great talent we can get as we tap into this unmarked group of people in our countries who can progress the fields. So panelists, let's start with quick introductions. Louise, you want to start with you?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Louise Duffy. I am the Chief Technical Officer for Absina, which is a discovery through development and manufacturing specialty biotech that works in some of the most cutting edge treatments.
Leslie, you want to go next?
Hi, my name's Leslie Leaf. I'm the Chief Customer Officer at Rebel Systems. We are the leading iPad point of sale cloud solution.
Hi, everyone. Peggy Pulliam. I head up the Client Services Organization at Absorb Software. Have been in the technology field about 30 plus years now, and excited to be here today.
Great. Subi, you want to go next?
I guess I'm the next. Hi, happy Women's Day. I guess every day is a Women's Day, but hi, I'm Subi Sethi, Chief Client Officer for Clearwater Analytics, which is the leading investment management and accounting SaaS firm.
Great.
Delighted to be here. Great.
And Krista?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Krista Arndt. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for United Musculoskeletal Partners, and we are a national group of orthopedic practices. So orthopedics and sports medicine. We have 372, I think, physicians right now. So I think we're the largest in the country.
Wonderful. All right, and then I'm going to turn it over to Kayla. Kayla Desenek leads for Absorb Software, our professional services and implementation teams, and she is going to be our moderator for today.
Thank you, Kim. I'm really excited to hear from our amazing panelists today. Welcome, everyone. Before we do jump in, I will note that if you do have any questions for today, feel free to put those into the Q&A right into the Zoom window there. But we'll jump right in with a speed round for our panelists. So we'll start with Louise. What is something commonly done or said in the workplace without even realizing it could be marginalizing women?
Thanks, Kayla. I think one of the things that always jumps out to me are the sort of social aspects of any workplace. And I think we're much more familiar with people really respecting women in formal settings, but it's in these more social settings. One of my personal really areas that I think is fraught is when companies do things like a sports team day and you wear your shirt, because I think so many women don't necessarily relate to that, or there's not a broad enough view of it. Could be your local softball team or your local soccer team that you have some connection to. So I think it's the blind side around, it's not just the work, but it's also the social aspects of it.
Yeah, I would say on my side, a lot of times it's word choice. I think using the term girl, you never hear the word boy used in an office setting. I would say my other issue or challenge that I see that happens is claiming or stating that a woman is being emotional with what's being said. Again, it's a topic that I've never heard someone claiming that a gentleman in the office place is being emotional. And I think emotion is used quite frequently in a negative connotation. And I don't think it is. I think quite often people lead with passion. And I think as long as you're looking at how the decision's being made, and that the decision's being made on data and based on the right things for the employee and for the business, then that passion's okay. So for me, it would be around word choice.
All right. I guess I would, two things on this. I echo what Louise said, but a little bit of a different take. The social aspects I do think can be tricky. Kind of almost the inverse of what you were saying though, Louise, is sometimes I think it's assumed that because you're a certain gender or that you're not going to want to do something, that you're not going to want to go to the bar after a meeting and watch the football game or whatever it is. Which obviously can end up being exclusionary. The other thing that comes to mind on this one is, and this is true with any group. I think that people don't always listen well. It's kind of that phrase of, are you listening or are you waiting for your turn to talk? And many people are just waiting for their turn to talk. And I think it ends up, if you're not really listening, you're losing insights from anybody in that room. And it's so important. And I see it happen often. So those would be the two things I'd call out. Subi?
I have to,
Okay, I'm going to build up on what Leslie said on some of the word choices, right? Two examples I will give. One, I was often asked as a part of growing professionally, can I come like a ton of bricks on anybody, right? So which means I was soft or whatever. When I actually learned that, and I really learned that hard for people will acknowledge who I worked with me, in a professional setting, and says, "Oh, she's aggressive," So, okay, where do you go? Then somebody says, "Okay, balance." So that's one example. So choices of words, right? It's not that we can't take hard calls. We do that every day, right? But how do we come across? Number two, which is very, very engraved and we don't even know, and I'm often found in my settings correcting people, right from budgeting. Oh, how much manpower do you need? Okay, how many man months this project will take, right? I'm sitting in the room and the room is with 5 women. Can we call them person power or can we call them person months? Because they would be, so it's a choice of word. It's so deeply, and it's not that they mean anything. It's not that they're meaning to exclude us, but it's so engraved as a part of their DNA that they don't even realize. I work with 2,000 clients, almost 1,500 of them tell me how many man months will this take? So I was like, you're talking to a woman. I would say I only know the person months, but not man months. So I think it's that. Yeah. Krista?
I echo all of your, I've had experience in all of these. One that I'm going to add to that is a little bit of the social aspect, socialization aspect is going to be, how do you manage being a mom and having a full-time leadership career? I struggle sometimes with how to answer that, because how does anybody manage being a parent and having a full-time leadership or even a full-time career in fast-paced industries these days we all run into? I think a lot of the same challenges. So having a mom or being a mom doesn't make you any less able to do your job. And, sometimes I think being a parent overall makes you more able-bodied to do your job with the juggling of priorities.
Those were all great responses. Appreciate the insight there. We're going to start with a question for Krista now. Could you name one or two people in your life who have been instrumental in your decision to pursue a career in STEM?
Yes, thank you. And I can, and surprisingly, it's not going to be at an early age. I'm one of those folks that got into technology late in my career. I started out in audit and mission assurance in the government. So I can remember two of my coworkers when I was in the DoD who took an interest in watching me succeed because they saw my passion for security and threat intelligence and insider threat, and they saw that I really wanted to learn. And I think without them, I really wouldn't be where I am today. So I would say I was probably halfway through my current span of career right now before someone really truly other than my father took an interest in pushing me to see my potential in STEM.
I'm sure quite a few people can relate to that. Thanks for sharing. Next question is for Subi. Studies show that girls tend to lose interest in STEM around middle school. What do you attribute this to, and how could we help combat that?
Actually, as Kim alluded to in the beginning of the call, the data is kind of the upside down sometimes, and, earlier we thought that it's cultural, it's geographical, right? The part of the world where I belong to, I remember going to a maths graduate class, and there were like 62 people, and we were three girls. All right, and that was a ratio, right? In fact, I'll take my own example. When I graduated from high school, I wanted to actually do literature, and my father actually told me, what, you want to read storybooks and do nothing, so he basically pushed me out because I was analytical in the way I was born. So he pushed me to doing mathematics graduate, right? And we were like three women, right? But having said that, I would say times have changed, you know times have changed. A lot of people earlier, to my mind, if I see journey 10 years back, it was okay, engineering, mathematics, science is hard life, so you actually go towards literature and psychology and philosophy for you to kind of take a different career path which will help you balance between family and and your professional career, so you can do something and you can balance that out. Because at the end of it, people who were in those careers, came home by 2 3 or whatever, they could devote time to families, right? Today you see a lot of people who are in technology world are from psychology background or from literature background, from arts background. It's not that people have lowered their standards or any of those. It's just that today technology is being designed keeping in mind a user profile, and to know the user profile, you need to know the different psychological elements of it, how people are born and brought up, right? So I would say it is changing. It is not changing fast enough, as we would like it to be, but that is for almost all paths of the career. It's also the biological clock. Our biological clock and our career clocks are in the opposite directions, right? When our careers need to be peaking, we need to have babies and we need to have families, at that same time, right? So sometimes it's like a trade-off, we all make, and everybody makes choices, men or women. It's gender equal to my mind, right? Somebody chooses to go after office to grab a drink and watch a Super Bowl, and somebody chooses to go home and watch kids, right? Those are choices we make. But I think a lot of change, in the developing countries, as Kim alluded to, if you go back and peel the onion, the reason why there is a better gender diversity in the STEM curriculum in those developing nations is because they have taken a first step towards unpacking the curriculum. They have abreasted the curriculum. They have, they're not using the same techniques to teach and, let people absorb in a global environment. So there is a lot of effort and hunger and desire in those nations. And hunger and desire drives a lot of things to my mind, right? They have gone ahead and completely revamped that curriculum for it to be more gender neutral, for it to be more amenable to many professional careers. And that is why, to my mind, is one of the factors of changing that out. So it becomes a greener pasture and people are more drawn and attracted towards that. Yeah. So that's my take on it. Still miles to go before we sleep, and that's true for almost, every career. But I think developed nation needs to kind of really, really double click it and unpack it and see, how are people learning and absorbing. Today's world is very different. You know, Today, how people learn and absorb, is very, very different. My 15-year-old son learns very differently than I can ever imagine. He's doing maths on iPhone 14. I have no idea how he does that. So how can you do algebra on an iPhone 14? So it's a different world, I guess, and it's interesting
Yeah,
to watch.
yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing. My next question is for Peggy. When women new in their career come to you for mentorship, what help are they typically seeking and how are you advising them?
I'd say one of the top questions I get for people that are earlier in their career, let's say 3 to 5 years in at the most, is they hit a point where they want to take the next step, either get into leadership or into a senior role. And they're frustrated because they don't know what to do to get there. Or a secondary one is they feel like they have learned enough that they should have a higher salary, but they don't know what to do with that. My first piece of advice is always advocate for yourself. Nobody is going to look out for you as much as you. Like, whether it's in the workplace, whether you're engaging with the medical community, like I do think some people enter the workforce and think that, oh, well, somebody will help guide me. And I do think companies, should help guide employees and give them career paths. But ultimately, nobody's going to look out for you like you. That's my mantra. The second piece of that is advocating for yourself. And studies do show that women tend to not advocate for themselves as much as males do. And they have to get comfortable with that. Like, if you firmly believe something, if you have the facts behind it, you got to get over that inhibition, that reluctance to advocate for yourself. And then finally, as far as going for that next step, whatever it is, making sure that there's clarity. And I've talked multiple females through this. Just talking them through it, like, okay, so have you talked with your manager about this? What have they said? Have they given you clear, guidance as far as here's what you do well, and here's where where we need to see you grow in order to get to that next level. And in that of where you need to grow, can you tell me exactly what that is? Like, can you articulate it? Do you know what experiences you need, what you need to improve upon? And so often, and I do think this goes back to the advocacy a little bit too, too many times they're either afraid to ask for clarity, or make sure that they clearly understand, what are the key criteria they have to meet, and assuming that the company has that position open, how do they move into that role? So really, so much of it does go back to advocacy, in so many of these things. And it does get easier with time, right? That the first time's the hardest, and then you get a little more comfortable with the advocacy, like I said, whether it's, in the workplace or out in the real world. So.
Thank you for that. I'm sure a lot of people listening can relate to that as well. All right, it's time for another speed round, everybody. So our next question is, what is your best tactical tip for someone wanting to grow their network, especially for introverts?
I will step into this one, Kayla. I think one of the things I just sort of note is that unlike a lot of men in their career who actually put networking as one of their key goals. Most women don't. And I think that's a real mistake. And we need to be coaching women all the way through their career, whatever route they're going. Having a network is so key. And it's perfectly fine to have a network. It's helpful. You are helping others as well, because I think sometimes women are uncomfortable in that setting. So some of the key tips I've always found is it's much easier to network if you have something in common. And I always advocate, if you can do something like go to a conference that's in an area you're interested in, at least you all have something in common. And doing something like going to a talk and not necessarily talking to the speaker afterwards, but some of the other attendees. Grab them at coffee and say, what did you think about this? Here's my thoughts. What did you think about it? And start the conversation there, because it's a lot easier because you're starting from a common ground, and then you can build it out and sort of bring folks in. I know for a lot of people, but women in particular, more early on in their career, it's very tricky to be able to do that. So starting from common ground really helps.
Yeah, I think you're right on that, Louise. I would also add, especially for the introverts, right? I think over the last couple of years, introverts have thrived. You know, being home and being remote, I think has been an introvert's dream situation, and has allowed people to really have an opportunity to create more one-on-one relationships. So I'm a silver lining kind of person. So that was the silver lining there. I would say start with a mentor. Right. I think sometimes having someone to help foster that relationship, that common interest, I think helps a lot. I think sometimes also it seems huge and daunting, right? Of building a network. You go out and you look at LinkedIn profiles and you're like, oh my God, that person's got 8,000, 10,000, 20,000 followers. What do I do? So I think act local, right? Most metropolitan areas have women's business groups. There's all kinds of whatever industry, whatever vertical you're in, there are a lot of professional groups. And so I think looking at those professional groups and then, leaning on what Louise said about, finding those common interests of what you're looking for. Social media has a lot of avenues, right? I mean, LinkedIn that's the whole platform. And within LinkedIn, there's a lot of national groups that then have local chapters. And so I would really find what those different industry groups are and try to get that participation. There's a lot of old school groups that still meet out there. And then you've got, again, on the introvert side, you've got your TED Talks, you've got your podcasts. So there's a lot of ways for you to get interested in those areas, lean and learn more about what they're doing to then get into that area of participation with them.
Agree with everything Louise and Leslie said. I guess I would add, I do think just getting started is important. And for introverts, that's the hard part, right? It's so daunting. To me, it's a little bit like an exercise regimen. You got to be disciplined about it. Do one event a week or a month, or make a goal of one contact per X time frame, and go for that. Because otherwise it's just so easy to keep putting it off, or I'll do that tomorrow. I'll do that tomorrow. Particularly for the introverts, like I said. I also think, Leslie, your suggestions on women's groups and all of that are wonderful too. I do for introverts, it might be easier to start internally, especially if you're in a big company. It's a little safer than, going into a room where you know nobody. But even within your company, networking with departments outside of your own, so do you, somebody in HR or IT or sales, just make a goal that you're going to make a contact and have, a work friend there, and create the little chart and check them off so you can see that you're doing it. I just getting started is part of it, I think.
Okay, I don't think so. I'll drain this because I think Peggy got me started. I when I was thinking through the answer, I had 4 point agenda. Number one, number two, Peggy has kind of taken care of. You know, it's first is acknowledgement, right? Second is, of course, have a regiment around it, right? Uh, Number three is, I would say, develop a sponsor, right? Sponsor as in whose only job is to sponsor you. Yeah, it's not how to teach you, it's just to kind of pull you, right? It's like a friend who loves to party. You don't like to party, but a friend who loves to party, you'll always get invited, and 2 out of 3 times you will show up with her or him, right? So have a friend, which is quasi extrovert, you'll flow with the wind at the end of it. Because I think enough is said about the importance of networking, right? So I think we're not debating that here. So once you have sponsor or a friend who's there, you'll flow with that person. And then it's a consistent conscious effort, right? It's a consistent conscious effort of hitting a gym, of writing that blog, of or doing a podcast, or just hanging around with somebody, or exchanging ideas, whatever that reason might be. Try and do that. Put a goal. I'll do that once in a week. I'll do that twice in a week, or I'll do that once in a month. Whatever suits your calendar, I would say do that. And honestly speaking, I think it's a world of introvert, as Leslie said. You know, you get noticed for different things. It's you don't get noticed for speaking first or the loudest or just hanging around. So nothing is wrong. It's all right. But I think as woman on a woman's day, I would call to action each one of you. I think it's woman's responsibility, all of us. If we hold one hand and take that out, I think women need to support a lot of women. Golfers support a lot of golfers, soccer players, people who drink beer, they go and do that. I think, take a pledge today. Just hold one woman hand and take them with you. If you're an extrovert, if you're an introvert, hold an extrovert hand. I think we'll be fine. I think in about 3 months we'll have double the women leaders than we have today. Yeah.
I'm going to say that you all make some amazing points, and you took the words right out of my mouth. My other suggestion for you introverts who might be on this call, add us on LinkedIn. We would be happy to help you start, to kind of meet people. I've seen a couple different things work. So number one, and probably the most fun, is in situations where I feel uncomfortable, I may seem like an extrovert because I'm on, a panel right now, but I'm very introverted. And I will tell you that I lead with a fun fact. And my fun fact is that I drag race, right? So I have met more people, not only in my tech industry and security and tech, by starting with a fun fact about myself that might be a little bit unique. I have met so many other people that have had probably a bigger impact on my career with teaching me different aspects of business. The psychology that everyone is mentioning is very critical to understanding, where you want to go and understanding and growing in your situation. And kind of my second point is going to be forced mentorship. So there are some mentorship programs out there. I actually signed up for one about a month ago, where I'm mentoring a great young woman looking to get into security in her first job. But the forced mentorship, or what I'm talking about, is they set up sessions for you. So you have this recurring meeting on your calendar, almost like a team meeting, and that there, someone else on the other end really excited and kind of waiting for you. So the forced is, when I mentioned that, it's more of like a scheduled event, kind of like, you would schedule going to the gym or something of that nature. I think that is awesome. And it also helps you not forget to kind of go out and meet one person a week or set your goals there, because it is already set up for you. Plus, some of those are in short stints. I think this one's like an 8-week stint. So you don't feel overwhelmed with constantly having to find things to talk about. And it's like going speed dating, right? So you get one mentor and you get that one-on-one time, and then you build your network and you find common ground there. And then, for the next 8 weeks, maybe you'll get paired with someone else, or maybe your network will grow from there.
Yeah, I was just going to build a little bit on this one because I feel like I'm an introvert, so I can totally relate to this question. I think a couple things that helped me. One was, especially when I started my family, the choice of, do I go out to after work for happy hour with a group of coworkers or to a sporting event? It became where I didn't really want to do that because I wanted to spend whatever hours I could with my family. So some of the networking I feel like was difficult because I wanted to be home when I could with my family, and the networking felt more optional. And so what I tried to do was combine the two. So we would have a big Easter bunny party where I would invite my coworkers and their children and their families. And it was an opportunity for me to network, but in a way where it was also special for my children and, the children of my coworkers. I also found it was difficult when I was younger, especially. Maybe times have changed now, but when I was younger, it would be a little uncouth to have lunch one-on-one with a man, both directions. It was just a little bit not as accepted. And I don't feel that way now, but when I was first in the workplace, I definitely felt that way. And so instead of opting for things like let's go have coffee or lunch, I would try to get time on their calendar and sit down and say, hey, this is my career goal, this is where I want to be, this is kind of the types of positions and experiences I feel like I need. What would you recommend? You've been through this. And what I found was, one, it was very comfortable. For men, they didn't feel like I was asking them out on a date. I mean, I know we've tried to advance, but there is still these sort of stigmas out there at times. And they also were just so glad to help. And so they would say, yeah, I agree with you. I think you need to have line experience in sales where you're learning that side of the business. And what that does is when they're in a meeting and somebody talks about, hey, I need somebody to bring on as a sales leader, um, they remember you and they think, oh yeah, this is something that she wanted to do. And then they make that connection like, hey, you should talk to Kim. She was interested in doing that. So I think just a couple of examples of what you might do to kind of combine that awkwardness, especially one-on-one with somebody, who may be odd, or also combining it with family things.
Thanks for sharing, Kim. Just as a reminder to everyone, if you do have any questions for us, feel free to drop them into the Q&A section. But I'll move on to our next one. So what roadblocks have you encountered in your career and how did you overcome them? And I'll maybe send it over to Louise.
Thank you, Kayla. I'm going to sort of talk about two roadblocks in my career, which somewhat relate to the themes we've already brought up, but at least illustrate how at least I approached getting around them. When I was doing my doctorate in engineering, I literally was the only woman in most of my classes, which you can imagine was pretty isolating. And what I did was I said, well, that's not nothing with the other students. They were no challenges there, but it's somewhat uncomfortable when you're in that setting. So I set about to build a network across the college of other women in similar situations. And it wasn't that difficult because there weren't that many to some extent, which is a shame, but hopefully that will change. But I will say that because we were all in the same boat, it led to lifelong connections. And it's been amazing where that group of women has gone. But at least it allowed us to quickly meet for coffee and talk about not so much what was going on in the classes or what your research was, but just to connect. And that I found really, really helpful in that very isolating environment. And then the second example that I sort of want to bring up is really later on, probably mid-career, I would say. I had gone up in a major pharmaceutical company. I'd gone up the technical route. I was at the top end of what you could do as a technical expert. And I wanted to move more into a broader management role. And in order to do that, I needed to get much more business experience. And I had some really good guidance from my mentor at the time. And he said, you've got to plot it out. You've got to figure out what gaps do you have? How do you go about gathering that information? And working with him, I planned out that I would like to go into business development. And in a pharma company, the global business development groups are one of the plumbest roles that you can have, because it's really interesting, very fast paced, and you look right across the whole company. So I started on this 2-year program in my mind of how do I actually get an opportunity to move to business development? And it was more about getting to know the teams there. How could I help them? I had a lot of expertise they needed to be able to do their job. But the thing that my mentor was very helpful with was do it systematically. When you've got a group of a job that you've got lots of people would like to do, people are more inclined to go for folks that they know, they've had interactions with, they're comfortable with. So fast forward over the 2 years, a role came up. I applied for it, moved into business development, and it turned out to be really helpful for the whole team, because I was the only person in that group who had technical and manufacturing experience. The rest of the group were mostly clinicians. So I got involved in almost everything. And I'm very thankful for that mentorship of systematically lay this out if you really want to do this. And just to fast forward in that story, that then allowed me to move into a general manager role where I ran a major pharma business, because I had at least met most of the criteria in that you needed for those roles. So I just want to sort of pick up a couple of the themes. We've got networking, we've got being intentional, and I think I can certainly see the value that that brought for me.
I completely agree. Next question for Leslie. What advice would you give to your 25-year-old self?
Shut up and listen. Probably would be the biggest piece of advice. I'm a big personality, lots of opinion. And it really was, Peggy mentioned it earlier, listening, and not being amped and ready to have your answer, right? Was really just sitting back and listening, I think was a big piece. At 25, I was in my first management role at PwC, which was pretty young at the time. And it was how to hire people. I thought the best idea would be hire a whole team like me. Yeah, that's definitely not a good idea. You want to hire for different strengths within your organization. And, you just kind of sit back and you're like, well, the strengths I have, if we had a lot of those, wouldn't that be great? And it's like, yeah, but you're forgetting about all of the other opportunities that you don't have. And I would say humility, learning to be humble. We're a fast-paced world, and especially in tech, it's fast and it's ever changing and ever evolving, and it's humbling. And I think that you have to remember to be humble. The other thing is, and it reminds me of Hamilton, which is one of my favorites, is you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. And you need to learn how to collaborate and how to make it a team sport and make, I got in trouble one time. I played soccer in college, and, my coach yelled at me and was like, Leslie, there's no I in team. And I yelled back and I said, but there is me. And I ran for days, ran a lot. And I really, I reflect on that still to this day, because, I think sometimes we do forget about the individuals on the team, and we're looking at things at a goal level and how it's going to affect the overall business and your clients and, things of that nature. But I think it is important to remember the individual. And I think it's important to understand what are their goals and objectives and how they all feed in. And so, number one is to listen. 2 is to stay humble. Remember, there are individuals, and we're working, to help grow those individuals, the collaboration piece, and then just being humble. And you can still be very effective and very successful with still remaining humble.
Thank you. Another question, this one's going out to Krista. What has helped you become an effective advocate for other women?
So I'll tell you a really short backstory, not to take too much time on this. My entire career, I worked in male-dominated industries. I worked in the DoD for, I want to say, 8 or 9 years at the start of my career. And I was always interested in psychology, as, you know, I never knew what I really wanted to do when I grew up. But I observed people. I observed mannerisms. I observed how people interacted with me, and you know that's a really great skill to understand how to collaborate and team build. But it's also a skill to kind of help you understand, you know, what is going on with these situations. And my younger self, we talk about our younger selves, didn't realize kind of all the issues that existed within, you know, women in the workplace and getting support, etc. Because the DoD and what occurred there was really normal to me, right? Like it's something that I engulfed myself in my entire life. So something that helped me to become a better advocate is, you know, to distance myself from, it was great for my career, don't get me wrong, but to distance myself from male dominated teams, which is pretty, you know, military, it's pretty typical. Even in tech with all of us, it's pretty typical where, you know, we are definitely growing as a group. But when I started joining outreach groups, when I got into you know, the private sector and I got into, you know, business outside the DoD, I started joining women's groups, and it was just a fluke, right? Like I didn't go out and seek them out, but I started really then observing them and observing the leaders who had a lot to give, a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, and listening to their advice and just observing, right? Like we always want to talk, but you know, not everybody learns to listen. So then I took some time to digest, you know, my experiences, what I'm hearing there, and then my new experiences in the private sector in the workplace. And I started putting it all together. And again, that kind of love of psychology and people watching and you know, taking in what occurs and forming a larger picture instead of just, you know, taking what someone says and taking it for face value. I have learned critical reasoning really early on in my life and saying that, you know, everybody has a perspective. So I would say learning the perspective of everybody, right? So women who had been involved in precarious situations, men who might have been, and people who weren't, right? People who, you know, have a stance on it here, like everybody, and taking that and forming my own opinion and using these experiences, not only for myself, but others to help when I mentor and kind of, you know, pay it forward to tell them what they may or may not experience in the workplace, but doing it very unbiased. I think taking an approach where you can truly remain unbiased when expressing your experiences to others is going to help you successfully give other women the information that they need to make an informed decision without trying to sway them one way or the other. So I'd absolutely say, you know, empathy for all sides, but also making sure that I remain unbiased when I do mentor.
Great.
Thank
We
you.
have a question I thought we could take, if that's okay, Kayla, from
Yeah, of course.
the group. Okay. A couple of these that are similar, so I'll just summarize it as, how can men help advocate for women, help to overcome some of the biases that might exist, etc. Anybody want to take that one?
Maybe I'll jump in here, and I want to give some kudos to my 19-year-old son. Whenever he interacts with some of his friends, young women who are anxious about an interview, or there's some reason that they have to interact and show up, he says, oh, don't worry about it, I'll talk to you. I'll give you the white male view of things. I'll pump you up. I'll give you that in the nicest of ways. And he's just like, how can I help you? And I am so impressed by some of the younger generation that they're able to think like that and help. So I think that's a great example. And he's not the only one. I've seen other men say, where can I advocate for you? Where can I help you? And it's really, really impressive.
Yeah, I'll add to that. One, watching the comments come through, awesome to see the participation, and especially I will say, you know, from the men that are on the call, I would say conversation, right? I would say conversation. It goes back to the listening, taking out bias, right? Educating yourself on what is going on. You know, generationally, we all have learned different things, and being receptive. You know, I've had the pleasure of working with a much younger workforce over the last 7 years, and I've learned a ton. And I'm so grateful and so appreciative of what I'm being taught. And I think that that's the piece, is you have to learn every day, and you have to try, and you have to show up. And you may not align, and you may not agree, and that's okay. We are different, and we need to celebrate those differences. But I think having the conversation, showing up, being respectful, I think that's the best starting point, you know, and is asking those questions. You know, one of the questions that was asked was, you know, how would we feel about, you know, we say guy a lot in the business place, and I mentioned not saying girl. And someone out there said, well, I think it was Johnny, said, what about gal? And truthfully, I'm okay with that term, but I'm also, as an openly gay female, I'm okay with the word guy. Because for me, guy is neutral, and it has been my whole life. But for other people, that's very different. And so I think asking people, you know, what are their pronouns? What are they comfortable with? That's how you start the conversation.
A lot of good points there, and to lean into the learning part that you were speaking about, we'll do another speed round. So Luis, starting with you, what is your go-to favorite leadership book and why?
So I'm going to break the rules a little bit here. I actually going to mention 2 books, but it's somewhat related. And I think this is part of the theme that we're talking about here. It's change, it's dynamic. So a go-to for me is always Leading Change from John Cotter. Cotter and Clay Christensen in that whole change environment, but it gives a really nice framework for how do you manage change. And I like books that you can help teams learn how to move forward, and it's a great example of that. Now, as I said, I was going to break the rules, so I want to mention one other book, which I'm sort of looking at the moment, and I think it's very apropos given what all that we've been through with the pandemic, and it's called The Art of Routine, and it came out a couple of years ago, and a lot of the discussion was everybody can't deal with all this change. Maybe we should try and make certain things routine, and it's the example of, you know, like the Steve Jobs black turtleneck. He didn't have to think about what he wore, kind of thing. So that's one of the books that I've been talking to my teams about. What can we make routine so we can really focus on the stuff we have to change, because there's more than enough of that. So those are my 2 books. Sorry, I broke the rules, but that's the way it is.
Yeah, I have 2 books as well, and I'll say them real quick. Strength Finder 2.0. I think it's very imperative to focus on people's strengths and not harp so much on the weakness. There's a reason it's a weakness. Typically, it's because people don't like that part and they don't like how it makes them feel. So focus on strengths. 2, Good to Great. It's a classic. I'm not saying it's the most fun read. It's a little dry, but the foundation that it lays is amazing. And then I would tell everyone, get a subscription to Harvard Business Review. I like quick snippets, articles. I'm more periodical based, because I think it just creates that continuous building block. And you know, there's not a lot of time these days to sit and read these big lengthy books. So big fan of HBR.
All right. So mine isn't a leadership book per se, but it's kind of similar to what Louise said. Change management is such a huge piece of leadership. And mine's The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, because it kind of covers the, you know, at what point does a trend pass this threshold and spread like wildfire, right? And it's, like I said, so much of leadership has changed. It's getting a team from point A to point B. And just some of the base premises in that book really you can apply them to all aspects of your life. And then honestly, it applies to DE&I initiatives as well. How do you, this culmination of small things that snowballs ultimately into where you want to go. So I love the book.
Okay, in the interest of time, I won't justify why I like them or not like them. But thank you, Leslie. Good to Great is a go-to, definitely. It's easy read. It's lays down the foundation, definitely. I still like Straight from the Gut by Jack. I think it's one of the old ones, but I think how he changed and the world around it. I think it was. But my favorite go-to book on leadership is Tintin Comics. So I think the way these characters are emulated and the fun, I'm still into comical world. So Tintin, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna go a little bit off the beaten path here. For anybody else who is a fitness nerd or who has watched Limitless on Nat Geo lately, read The Art of Resilience by Ross Edgley. So that was originally written to kind of be a fitness-centric book, but he really goes into his experiences with Stoic sports science and how to overcome adversity in, extreme situations, but also in, situations that have a long time frame to them, and kind of how you use what you have and what you were given and the skills that you have to the best of your ability. I really like how he kind of mixed like stoicism and virtue with overcoming and, maintaining and succeeding, and even learning lessons from your experiences, even in those times where you don't succeed, which I think is really important and is the true reason that we are able to get ahead, is to learn from our failures.
Great. I'm going to jump in with another question. So in your experiences, how much does being isolated by being the only woman in a setting, or being in a setting that's like very competitive, for example, influence a decision to stay in an industry, stay in a company, advice on how you might deal with that situation, which honestly, I'm guessing we have all been the only woman in the room many times. So anybody want to take that one?
I can warm it up by saying feel special. Since you're the only one, you're rare and you're special. First you got to feel good about yourself. And I think the journey can start. I know Peggy wanted to add. So, why do you say I'm the only one? I'm rare, I'm special, I'm priceless, I'm invaluable. Feel good.
I would agree with that, Subi. I think at some point it comes down to, is it the right fit for you? If you were day in and day out the only one of X in a room, ultimately life's short. You need to be happy. Like, you got to make an assessment of, is this the right environment for me, or do I need to find something that's more diverse and makes me a little bit happier? But there's a lot of things that go into that, right? Are you learning? Are you growing? I don't think you can boil it down to one factor, but I do think it should be a factor.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big differences, at least for me now, is I didn't have choices back when I was starting my career. There wasn't a company really I could go to that had women in senior leadership and women as bosses. You had
An
no
excellent point.
choice. So you either just stuck it out and dealt with it. I think the difference today, and probably the reason that, diversity and inclusion is such a hot topic, is that people have choices. Women can go to companies with many women leaders. Blacks can go to companies with Black leaders. People can go to companies where they've got gay leaders. Like, you do not any longer have to be the only person in the room, whatever that person is, right? And so I think that I agree with Peggy that at some point there are places you can go where you will feel included. And it's exhausting to be the only one in the room. Yes, you can feel special, but it's also very difficult. and progressing a career is hard enough. And I guess I would just say in today's world, you have choices, and you should just remember that. Like you do not have to be the only person in the room anymore.
Yeah, and I'm going to add on, Kim, to what you said there, because I think the other thing that's important is for us as leaders to recognize that people have choices. And we need to ensure that we're creating the right culture and the right environments that people want to stay and be a part of. And I think that that idea 20 years ago would have been absolutely not heard, right? And I think now it's people have just as much of a choice as the company has a choice, and we all need to be very, very aware of that, and make sure that we are providing that environment that does have the inclusion.
Can I try? I know we're at time, but I just want to chime in because I'm really passionate about this topic. I'm really fortunate to be mentored by one of the CISOs from one of the largest healthcare organizations on the East Coast. And she had a really good point because we discussed this topic. You know, if you're in a position in a room where you are the only one, maybe it's part of, you know, your job or something that you want to take on as the only woman in the room to start to help to change those tides, right? You know, and everybody's threshold is going to be a little bit different for that and the propensity to want to change those ties and to fight that battle. But let's think about that, you know, next time we are the only one in the room and we think about our choices, you know, let's try to shift the tides for our peers as well.
I agree. I cannot believe that this hour went so quickly, but I want to thank you for joining us to celebrate International Women's Day. I hope today's discussion provided you with ideas and inspiration to support women in their careers, to overcome obstacles you may face, and to raise strong girls. So please join us on March 21st for our next Ally Chat, where our panel will support the United Nations International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. So until next time, remember each of us can be an ally, and each of us can make our companies a better, more inclusive environment. Thanks for joining.